Welcome to the Miami Jewish Film Festival, the world's largest festival of its kind. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, and all of you, film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for their continued support throughout all these years. My name is Desiree Masucci, and I'm the head of the dance program at Ransom Everglades School in Miami, Florida. And I'm excited to be moderating a virtual conversation with choreographer and producer, Mr. Stephen Mills, and the director and producer, Mr. Paul Michael Bloodgood, from the movie Finding Light, which is premiering at this year's festival. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So gentlemen, just want to jump into here and say that the film was absolutely enrapturing. It was so heartfelt. I want to admit, 4 minutes in, I was already crying. I am a dancer myself. I love dance, and so many things that all of you said and that you showed in your film resonated with me, not just also as a dancer, but as a person. But kind of starting from some questions I had at the start of the film, one of the things that I was so taken by is that personally, I've always felt a connection to the Jewish faith as well, but I am not myself Jewish. And I admit, even when I was going to watch the film, I was like, oh gosh, I'm like, how can I connect with a choreographer who, must have connected to this, and I figured that you'd be of the Jewish faith, but you said in your first intro that you are not of the Jewish faith. And one of the things that I loved that you said is that you expressed your reservations and felt that you were maybe not equipped to tell Naomi Warren's story as somebody who was non-Jewish. And the topic of, appropriation versus appreciation is so poignant right now in our culture and across the arts. And I wanted to ask you, what would you say to artists who feel that they want to tell stories and express themselves and stories that are resonant with them, but they worry about appropriation?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about this. I think that they worry is important. Appropriation is, and that line is very, very malleable, right? And so, and even those who might have the best of intentions can still make mistakes, right? It can still be problematic. And when you're talking about something as profound as the history of the Holocaust, there are a lot of ways for it to go wrong. And if I said to you that I went into it with no apprehension, I would be lying. And so I think that for me, if there's success related to my, as you say, not being Jewish, I was raised Catholic, and so I'm not Jewish. Trying to tell Naomi's story, it was important for me to be as educated on the subject matter as was possible. So, my educating myself into this subject was the most important aspect of it to me, and still understanding that things could still go wrong. I think that I had such an appreciation and respect for Naomi, and as well as all the survivors that I interviewed, that I just brought my humanity to it. I tried to connect what was human about me, and while I could never understand what a survivor of the Holocaust went through, trying to find those lines of resonance from my own personal life to Naomi, I think was part of the success in the project.
Wow, completely. Paul, or Mr. Bloodgood, is there anything you would like to say? Did you have any of the similar thoughts or apprehension with directing this film?
Absolutely. I have to say, so as a background on me, I used to be a dancer as well. I was in the original cast of Light the Holocaust and Humanity Project back in 2005. So I have a long history with this work with Stephen, and of course a working relationship with Stephen. I would never have even considered making a film on this subject matter had I not had Stephen as the example to lead through. And also because of what Naomi, how she shared that Stephen has a platform and he should use it. And I've taken that sort of mantle from a film perspective and said, okay, well, I have this platform, and I know that, Naomi is no longer with us, but I know that she would want us to continue to share her story. And so I feel confidence is the wrong word, but I feel that we're doing it from the right place, and it really is. It's a human story, right? So we're talking about how, as someone says in the film, about that it's human beings, how they're treating other human beings, and so that's really that's the through line.
That's completely amazing to hear. You kind of both just said that too, about how even in the midst of everything, to say that there weren't things that could have been differently. I mean, what would you say now, looking back on anything? Would you do anything different?
I think that I don't know what I would have done differently. I anybody who has spent time in trying to understand this period of history, the period of history that's just inconceivable in so many ways. Once you put yourself in that information, and the more you know, it's almost, the more you know, the more you don't, you can't know. I mean, because we're still discovering things about that period of history. So all I can say is, for the period of time in which I was, and I spent, I don't know, 2 years in development and education just for myself. It changes the way you look at everything, and it changed the way I even looked at my practice of dance making, and the way I am in the studio with my dancers, and the ways in which I have interactions in my own personal life. So I don't know what I would do differently, because every minute of it was a gift to me. It was like I was privileged to be in this situation, to be able to have these conversations, to be able to develop this knowing, and then to be able to share it with an audience, and now through this film to be able to share it to a more broader audience. I can't think of anything I would do differently.
Maybe to rephrase, because we never, as artists, sometimes we just don't think the project is ever done, that it could always be expanded on, that it could always be added to. We're always almost asking ourselves, much like how writers are, where they have to make a decision about their characters, and like they have that existential moment where they don't maybe know how they want their own stories to end. Is there anything you're excited about, or both of you can chime in, of where you would like to take this even more, like beyond maybe the film? Like, is there something you still are excited about that you're thinking would be an amazing experience, a deeper experience?
Well, I mean, for me personally, the dance as well as the film, I think that, we're living in a period of time that is in many ways terrifying. And while we certainly can't make comparisons to the political history of that period of time, there are things about the world in which we live right now that are terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
And Naomi, Naomi and other people that I had spoken with were really insistent that it was, the Holocaust was the most insidious crime against Jews, the most anti-Semitic murder, I guess, would be, the best way to say it, in the history of the world. But we're living in a different time, and how can we, without diminishing what happened, without diminishing that period, or the lost lives, or the people that still live with the memory of that, how can we honor them and use the knowledge that we've gained from it to talk about today's issues? And there are numerous ones, right? Personally as well as politically. The past and the present live together always. They're never separated from each other. And so Naomi would be the first one to say, you've got to take what you know and apply it. And so, while I hope that the dance continues on, I hope this film has some success. The most important part about it is that we're able to leverage it for a higher understanding and greater education. And Paul, I don't know if you have a different thought about that, or.
No, I'm going to echo you once more. Education is key. That's
Yeah.
If I had a goal for this film, so the film doesn't exist without the ballet. And the thing that's unique about the ballet is that it's living art. So when you go to see the performance, you are seeing something that you will not see again. That particular emotion, that particular movement will not be replicated exactly the same. So that is a unique way to memorialize through art, something that in the past, so it's not just, film is like, that's where I love to live, but that is a reflection of the dance. So I would love to see is to have light be performed, the ballet light be performed all over the country, all over the world, beyond where it already has performed. And I hope that this film can be sort of an instigator of that, and it starts conversations, and people have, in their communities go, that was a great film. I'd love to see the ballet in person.
Yes.
And so then that sort of becomes the, colleges, high schools, if that's where we can start with the film, and then we can bring the ballet to, and then there can be various schools and whatnot that come to the shows. That's the dream for me. And as far as what the film can contribute to the ballet.
That is exactly what I thought the whole time as an audience viewer, and I live in Miami, and what propelled me was I wanted more education after watching your video, after you're watching your film. It was, when is it coming to Miami? Then sadly finding out it was already there. And why did I miss it? And again, seeking more information, looking all you up and wanting to know more about you, and like everything. I was just completely enthralled. So I think that is completely like that is like our goal, right? Is knowledge is power. And I really resonated with Naomi's line where she said that we must know our past, but like we live to move forward in our future. Like you must let them live in the same breath. So that way it's that concept of never again. But we said it again. We say it, you said it in the film. It's like we said never again, but yet it's not applicable. It's again, it is again. And something that I really loved that everybody said, I was asking myself these questions in the film, but what is the universal message? And then halfway through the film, you said it was survival. And that really resonated. Like when I was sitting back and I was asking myself those questions, how do we cope or accept, like, is it compassion? Is it tolerance? It's all needs to be heavier. There needs to be something stronger. And then you said the universal message is survival for both of you. How did that resonate with you? And especially now, Stephen, you brought up, like, these are terrifying times. Like, I think in a way, everybody is seeing that there's parts of us where we feel we need, parts of our identity need to survive, or we need to protect, and in the political realm we're in.
It's really easy to feel hopeless. It really is. And in in the discussions with Naomi, when I was trying to lay out what the framework of the dance would be, because, you're not in the dance, we're not telling the story of the Holocaust. I mean, that's an impossibility. We're telling the story of one survivor who came out on the other side and made a life that was amazing and wonderful. So Light, Light is, she was the most optimistic person I think I ever met. I've met a lot of survivors, and not everyone felt this way. I mean, people were harmed in very, very dramatic ways and weren't always able to put it into a context that allowed them to move forward. And you have to understand that. But Naomi felt that had she not have had hope when she was in camp, she definitely would not have survived. And so the dance is segmented into 5 sections, with the last section being called Hush. And it really is, at the end of this great catastrophe, what happens on the other side? Well, Naomi chose hope. And so we're going to be performing this work in April, the beginning part of April in 2023. And I've just been mulling that over, right? And feeling like I have felt hopeless over the past few years in moments of my life, and feeling like, well, maybe that's a cop-out. Maybe, not, like Primo Levi. We think about the writers of that time, Elie Wiesel and Primo Levi, and they both had very different experiences at the end of their lives. Primo Levi obviously, committed suicide. And, so I've been in that situation where I'm wondering, is that really it? Shouldn't we just show the aggressive brutalness, the what was left was nothing, right? But Naomi always sits on my shoulder, right, talking in my ear, right? And that idea was, what else do you have? Really, what else do you have? If you can't find a place for hope, what else do you have in life? So the dance will remain intact, and I will continue to do that. We all need little angels sitting on our shoulders sometimes, and Naomi is mine. So.
Wow, that's really poignant. That hits hard. Like,
Yeah. I think it does for a lot of people. It's been a very difficult past 6 years, and where we're wondering, what kind of country are we? Where are we going? What are we doing? Why are we thinking in these destructive, otherizing ways, right? And how do we push ourselves forward to continue to be better? Never perfect, but continuing to be better.
I like that. That's really nice. Paul, is there anything, how do you feel about all this? And
Well,
your stance on hope?
Sure. Well, I think it seems a little on the nose, but finding light, that's sort of what it's alluding to, the title. So you could almost call it Finding Hope, and I think it would have the same context. So that's definitely, that is the way. And if you recall, in the film, at one point, we're kind of showing different dancers being interviewed from different companies.
Yes.
And Julie, whose family, she had survivors in her family. And she says in the end that she's healthy and she's young and she's vibrant, and she's like, and that's the light. Like, so that really resonated with me when she said that. It was like, okay, yeah, that's, and her perspective is unique, because I actually, to my knowledge, most dancers that have performed this ballet have not had Jewish heritage. So that was an interesting and unique perspective.
That's really interesting. I believe I have maybe time for like one more question, but kind of going along that, and want to leave it on this idea of hope. I always heard once that hope actually stands for hearing other people's experiences. And I think that's exactly what you all did. not even just with Naomi's story. It's exactly every single dancer that has danced in the principal role, and every person involved brought something to this endeavor. And what I was going to ask was, if people cannot relate directly with experiences, we relate through shared emotion, about the idea of everybody has had to be through survival. Everybody has felt hopelessness. So we cannot quantify emotion in a way, right? To say your experience is more than mine is not fair. But could you both maybe expand on how you resonated with everything, and where in some way you connected everything for yourself, not being actual Holocaust survivors, or I don't know if you have any family, but how did you really get through it emotionally, and how did you find the way to connect?
Well, I mean, it's hard knowledge to live in, certainly. And when we stage a dance, generally it's a 6-week process. So you're living, for me, I'm living in the experience. I'm telling the stories of the things that I learned, and how particular gestures relate to whatever's happening in the dance, or some story that Naomi told or another survivor's told, or recalling standing in the gas chamber at Auschwitz, and the way I was trying to connect to, in some way, to the vibrations of what had happened in this space. I think the important thing is that, I mean, mercifully, we don't know, most people don't know what it is to be a survivor of the Holocaust. But most people know what it is to be a survivor. We've survived. People have lost, people have losses, people have things that are just devastating in their lives. And as you say, I think I said in the film, you can't measure suffering. There's no weighing system for suffering. And some people's capacity to endure suffering is greater than others, and there's no way to measure that. So for me, I just tried to connect to those moments in my life where I felt, I don't know, lost, or I felt estranged, or I felt confused, or I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, because we all have those moments. And trying to find, I'm anyone lucky enough to have a friend like Naomi, going back and touching those moments with her, right? Those have always been really helpful to me. And connecting, we can all find a connection. We just have to look for it. It's there. We're all connected in so many ways. We try not to be, but we are. And I think that if you earnestly search for it, that you can find it. And I just earnestly searched for it.
And Mr. Bloodgood, is there anything you would like to continue?
I think for me, it's always just come down to that human connection from one human to another. When the ballet was created, I was a newlywed at the time. So when Naomi came and shared her story about her loss of family, so I connected to her empathetically in that regard. And I just, you have that idea of like imagining losing your spouse, or, that story, and how catastrophic that would be. And then flash forward to now, and I have 2 children. So now I think about the loss of children. My father passed away tragically earlier this year. So I have my own personal loss in that regard. So there's just those things where again, those constant layers of how you can relate to something. It's evolved for me. It's changed over we're approaching 2 decades. So it just becomes, but the story is just as relevant. So it doesn't matter that it happened decades ago. It doesn't matter. It was still humans and human suffering, and families have been, have existed for a very long time. So I feel like that's an element that can always be relatable, much like how music is something that seems to transcend differences, right? If someone I feel like the human element to this is how you're going to speak to people who might not like they might just initially see something and just be, well, I'm not Jewish. How does this apply to me? And that's sort of the point, I think, of the ballet and the film.
Completely. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your words and your insight. Your film was absolutely breathtaking. And I will just conclude by saying again that we want to say thank you to choreographer and producer, Mr. Stephen Mills, and director and producer, Mr. Paul Michael Bloodgood from the movie Finding Light. And thank you again to all our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, and all of you film lovers for participating in the Miami Jewish Film Festival.